Hello everyone and welcome to this week's game development log video diary, and this week I've been working on font rendering, GUIs and an in-game menu. So the first thing that I worked on since the last devlog was rendering text, and to do this I used something called signed distance fields. Instead of just storing images of all the characters like bitmap fonts, these textures also hold information about the distance from the character. This allows me to render much higher quality text, especially when rendering very large fonts, which, as you can see, look a bit pixelated when you simply scale up an image of the character. Using this system also makes it very simple to add some nice dynamic effects to the text. So for the text system in Equilinox, I've added support for two different effects, outlines and glow. And thanks to the flexibility of the signed distance field system, the size and colour of these effects can be changed dynamically in the fragment shader without any trouble at all. Once I'd set up the font rendering system, I then moved on to creating a GUI system. I spent a bit of extra time trying to design a system that's a little bit more dynamic than the GUI system that I had set up in SOG1, which makes it a bit easier for the GUIs to be moved around the screen and resized without much difficulty. I then used all of the font rendering and GUI systems to create this menu which slides on and off the screen whenever you press escape. On here I've got the options menu, which currently just has a couple of simple graphics options, but later you'll also be able to change the language and the sound and music settings here. I also created this very temporary controls screen just so that anyone testing the game knows what keys they have to press, and finally there's a quit button, and I'm sure you can guess what that does. When I want to go back into the game, I can just press the escape key, or I can click on the play button. The final thing that I worked on this week was a post-processing pipeline, which will allow me to add some very nice effects in the coming weeks. The way that this works is that instead of rendering the scene to the screen each frame, I instead first render it to an off-screen texture. This means that I now have a 2D image of the screen, which I can then process just like any other 2D image, so I can change the brightness, increase the contrast, mess around with the colours, and things like that. Once the image has been processed, it can be rendered back onto the screen as usual. I just started setting up this system yesterday, so I haven't really put it into full use yet, but I did kind of use it to create this blurred background for the options menu. To create this blurred effect, I first rendered the scene to a low resolution texture, which makes the blurring a bit less expensive. I then render this image of the scene, applying a horizontal Gaussian blur in the shaders to produce this image, and finally I render the image one more time, applying a vertical Gaussian blur this time, which creates this image. And this is the image that I used as the background texture for the menu, simply fading it in and out when necessary. So that is it for another week. Next week I'm going to be adding the final touches to the render engine with some post-processing effects and maybe some particle effects as well. As always, I need to give a massive thank you to the Patreon supporters, and this week I need to give a special shout out to the top donators from last month, who were Alec Nunn, Jerry Bradshaw, Justin, Dan, Danny D, and last but not least CrazeeRuskee, who actually recently made another video for me on his channel to help promote the Patreon, so an extra thank you to him for that, and there's a link to his YouTube channel in the description below. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching this video. Do subscribe if you haven't already. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you all next time.